There's a kind of pain that doesn't show up in therapy sessions or self-help books, a pain that lives in the space between what you see and what everyone else refuses to acknowledge. You've probably felt it. That moment when you're sitting across from someone you love and you can see exactly what's breaking them, exactly what pattern they're repeating, exactly what shadow they're running from, and they look at you like you're speaking a language that doesn't exist. Or maybe you've walked into a room and felt the weight of unspoken grief, ancestral wounds, invisible fractures in the collective psyche, while everyone around you is laughing and pretending everything's fine. And you think to yourself, am I the only one who sees this? Am I crazy, or is everyone else just asleep? Here's the truth nobody wants to tell you. You're not crazy. You're awake. And being awake in a world that's addicted to sleep is one of the loneliest forms of exile you can experience. Most people think sensitivity is a weakness, something to overcome, something to medicate, something to hide. But what if I told you that your ability to see what others can't isn't a flaw? What if it's actually an ancient gift, an archetypal inheritance that's been passed down through generations of seers, shamans, oracles, and wounded healers who carried the burden of perception so that others didn't have to? The problem isn't your sensitivity. The problem is that you've been living in a world that has no framework for it, no ritual to contain it, no language to honor it. And so your gift has turned into a curse, a constant drain on your energy, a source of alienation, a weight that makes you feel too much, too intense, too aware for your own good. You've probably tried to turn it off, tried to numb it, tried to fit into a reality where people don't look too closely at anything. But it doesn't work, because once you've seen behind the veil, once you've tasted the depth of what's really happening beneath the surface, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. But here's what most people don't realize, and what this entire conversation is about. The pain of seeing isn't just about witnessing other people's unconsciousness. It's about the mirror. It's about how your heightened perception is constantly reflecting back your own unhealed wounds, your own unintegrated shadow, your own soul's unfinished business. And until you understand that, until you stop trying to save everyone else and start tending to the oracle within yourself, you'll stay trapped in the exhausting cycle of feeling too much, caring too much, and burning out, because you're carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. So if you've ever felt like your intuition is both a gift and a prison, if you've ever wondered why seeing clearly feels like a curse, if you've ever been desperate to find a way to honor your sensitivity without letting it destroy you, this is for you. Because we're about to go deep into the archetypal pain of the visionary, the exile of those who see ahead of time, and most importantly, the ritual of turning your gift into embodied wisdom instead of a wound that never heals. This isn't about becoming less sensitive. It's about becoming more whole. There's a particular kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from seeing what no one else seems to notice. You're in a room full of people, and you can sense the tension beneath the laughter, the fracture behind the smile, the shadow that nobody's naming. It's like you're watching a play where everyone's reciting their lines perfectly, but you're the only one who can see the strings, the mechanisms, the unspoken script that's really running the show. And here's the thing, this isn't about being smarter or better. It's about carrying a kind of intuition that operates like a sixth sense, a pulse that picks up on what's hidden, what's denied, what's too uncomfortable for most people to acknowledge. But that gift? It often feels more like a curse because while everyone else gets to stay comfortable in the veil, you're standing there naked to the truth, and it burns. This exile isn't geographical. It's emotional, psychological, ancestral. You can be surrounded by family, friends, colleagues, and still feel like you're speaking a language that doesn't exist in their world. When you try to name what you see, the dysfunction in the family system, the toxic pattern in the friendship, the spiritual bankruptcy beneath the success, you're often met with defensiveness, dismissal, or that look that says, you're too intense. And maybe you are. Maybe your soul remembers something the collective has agreed to forget. Maybe your inner house still has windows while everyone else has boarded theirs up, preferring the safety of not knowing over the terror of seeing clearly. The oracle in ancient times was revered, yes, but she was also isolated, set apart, because her vision made people uncomfortable. She lived at the edge of the village, not in its center. And if you've ever felt like you're living at the edge of your own life, watching everyone else participate in a reality you can't unsee the flaws of, you know this ache intimately. What makes it worse is that you can't just turn it off. This isn't a skill you learned in a workshop. It's wired into your nervous system, embedded in your intuition like an ancient rhythm that won't stop drumming. You see the ruin before the building falls. You feel the abandonment before the person leaves. You recognize the ancestral wound playing out in real time, and you watch people repeat patterns their great-grandparents started, completely unaware they're just actors in a mythic time loop. And because you see it, you feel responsible. You think, if I could just help them see it too, they could be free. But here's the cruel paradox. The more clearly you see, the less people want to hear it. Your vision doesn't bring you closer to others. It creates a gulf, a silence, a subtle alienation that whispers, you don't belong here. And the loneliest part, you start to believe it. Throughout history, there's been a recurring pattern, a cruel rhythm that plays out across cultures, across centuries, like some kind of cosmic joke. The people who see ahead of time, who sense the shifts before they happen, who carry prophetic intuition in their bones, they're almost always rejected first. Think about it. The shaman who speaks to spirits gets called crazy until the tribe needs healing. The mystic who warns of collapse gets ignored until the walls actually fall. The artist who paints the shadow of the coming era gets mocked until that era arrives, and everyone suddenly says, oh, they were right all along. But by then, the visionary has already bled out emotionally, already spent years in exile, already learned that their gift is something people only want after the fact, never in the moment when it could actually prevent the wound. This is the archetypal pain of those who see. You're always too early, always too raw, always too much for a world that prefers its truth sanitized and delayed. The soul that carries expanded awareness doesn't just see further, it feels deeper. It's not abstract knowledge, it's visceral, like your nervous system is picking up frequencies that others have learned to filter out. You walk into a space and you feel the grief that hasn't been named yet. You meet someone and you see the fragment of them that's still trapped in childhood, still waiting for permission to exist. You watch a relationship and you can sense the mythic pattern underneath, the abandonment wound replaying, the codependent loop that mirrors an ancestral bond that was never broken cleanly. And when you try to name it, when you try to bring language to what you're perceiving, you're often met with resistance, anger, or worse, silence, because people aren't ready. The collective moves at its own pace, and the visionary is always a few steps ahead, standing in a future that hasn't arrived yet, calling back to people who can't hear them because they're still living in yesterday's story. And here's where it gets even more painful. The rejection isn't just external. The visionary starts to internalize it. You begin to question yourself. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe I'm the problem. You start to silence your own intuition, because every time you've trusted it and spoken it, you've been made to feel like you're disrupting the peace, like you're the one bringing chaos when really, you're just naming what's already there, festering beneath the surface. The wounded healer archetype isn't wounded because they're broken. They're wounded because they've been rejected for seeing too clearly, for feeling too much, for refusing to pretend that everything's fine when the forest inside is burning. And so, you learn to live split, part of you still seeing, still knowing, and another part of you performing normalcy, tucking your vision away like a dangerous secret, because you've learned that the world doesn't reward seers, it punishes them, until it needs them, and by then you're too tired to care. Here's the part nobody tells you about heightened perception. What you see in others is never just about them. It's always a mirror, sometimes subtle, sometimes brutally obvious, reflecting back the unhealed territories inside yourself. You notice the way someone can't receive love. If you're honest, really honest, there's a part of you that struggles with the same thing. You see someone sabotaging their success right before the breakthrough, and somewhere in your own inner house, there's a room where you've done the exact same dance. The intuition that allows you to read others so clearly isn't separate from your own psyche. It's deeply entangled with it. Your ability to perceive their shadow is born from your intimate relationship with your own. And this is where the pain multiplies, because you're not just witnessing their unconscious patterns, you're being triggered by the parts of yourself that are still raw, still unintegrated, still pulsing with unfinished business from your own soul's journey. Think about the times you felt most disturbed by what you've seen in someone else. Maybe it was a friend who kept choosing unavailable partners, or a family member who refused to acknowledge their own pain and kept projecting it onto everyone around them. The intensity of your reaction, the frustration, the helplessness, the almost desperate need to make them see. That's not just compassion, that's resonance. It's your own unhealed wound recognizing itself in another form. Jung called this projection, but it's more intimate than that. It's like your soul is looking into a broken mirror and seeing fragments of itself scattered across other people's lives. The narcissist, you can't stop analyzing. There's a part of you that's terrified of your own self-centeredness. The victim you're exhausted by. There's a place inside you that hasn't fully stepped out of that story either. This doesn't make you a fraud or a hypocrite. It makes you human. It makes you someone who's still in process, still integrating, still learning that the oracle's gift is inseparable from the oracle's own wounding. And here's where it gets alchemical. When you can sit with this truth, when you can acknowledge that your perception of others is also a revelation about yourself, the whole dynamic shifts. You stop trying to fix people and start witnessing them. You stop feeling responsible for their awakening and start tending to your own. Because the real work isn't out there, it's in here, in the quiet ritual of turning your gaze inward and asking, what is this showing me about myself? Maybe the reason you see their abandonment wound so clearly is because yours is still asking to be held. Maybe the reason you can sense their rage before they even feel it is because your own anger has been living in exile, unexpressed, waiting for permission to exist. The mirror isn't just showing you them, it's showing you the map of your own unfinished healing. And once you start working with that map, once you start treating your heightened perception as an invitation to self-inquiry rather than a mission to save others, everything changes. The curse starts to feel a little less like a burden and a little more like a return. There's an old story that repeats itself across every culture, every era, every spiritual tradition. The story of the prophet who speaks truth and gets stoned for it. The one who sees the future and gets called a madman. The one who warns the village and gets exiled to the wilderness. It's not just a biblical motif. It's an archetypal pattern that lives in the collective unconscious, and if you've ever felt like your intuition makes you an outsider, you're living inside that pattern right now. The rejected prophet isn't rejected because they're wrong. They're rejected because they're right too soon, because they're speaking a language the collective hasn't developed ears for yet. And the intuitive soul, the one who operates from symbolic sensitivity and archetypal awareness, is constantly bumping up against this ancient wound. You're speaking in poetry, in metaphor, in soul language, and the world around you is operating in literalism, in logic, in the language of survival and surface. And the gap between those two languages? It's where the rejection lives. It's where the loneliness breeds. Think about Cassandra from Greek mythology. She was given the gift of prophecy by Apollo, but cursed so that no one would ever believe her. She saw the fall of Troy coming. She warned everyone, and they dismissed her, mocked her, thought she was hysterical, and then everything she predicted came to pass, and still, No one apologized. No one said, "You were right," because that's not how this archetype works. The seer doesn't get vindication, they get silence. They get the slow erosion of their own confidence because speaking truth into a void long enough will make you question if the truth even matters. And if you're someone who's ever tried to share your intuition about a relationship that was heading toward ruin, about a decision that felt spiritually wrong, about an energy in a room that no one else seemed to notice, and you've been met with blank stares or polite dismissal, you know exactly what Cassandra felt. You know what it's like to carry knowledge that has nowhere to land, to speak revelation into ears that aren't ready to hear it, to watch people walk straight into the thing you warned them about and then act surprised when it happens. But here's the deeper layer. The rejection isn't just external, it's internalized. After enough times being dismissed, after enough moments of feeling like you're speaking a language from another dimension, you start to silence yourself. You start to think, maybe I am crazy, maybe I'm too much, maybe I should just stop trusting what I feel. And that's the real tragedy of the rejected prophet archetype. It's not just that the world doesn't listen, it's that eventually you stop listening to yourself. You abandon your own intuition before anyone else can, because it hurts less to do it yourself than to keep offering your vision and having it refused. The shaman in traditional cultures was revered, yes, but they also lived apart, in the liminal space between the village and the forest, because their awareness was too potent, too disruptive, too raw for everyday life. And if you've ever felt like you're living in that in-between place, where you don't quite fit with the people who are still asleep, and you haven't found your tribe of fellow seers yet, you're not broken. You're just holding an ancient role in a modern world that has no framework for it. And that exile, it's not proof that you're wrong. It's proof that you're carrying something real. There's a compulsion that comes with heightened perception, an almost unbearable urge to help people wake up. You see someone you love walking toward a cliff, and everything in you wants to grab them, shake them, make them see what's coming. You watch a friend repeat the same toxic pattern for the 10th time, and you think, if I could just explain it clearly enough, if I could just show them the loop, they'd finally break free. So you feel this responsibility, this almost sacred duty, because you've been given the gift of sight, and surely that means you're supposed to use it to save people, right? But here's the cruel truth that nobody warns you about. Trying to save someone who isn't ready to see is one of the most spiritually exhausting things you can do. It's not just futile, it's a form of self-abandonment, because every ounce of energy you pour into trying to wake someone else up is energy you're not using to tend to your own healing, your own integration, your own journey. And the people you're trying to save, they don't thank you for it. They resent you, because you're threatening the very structure that's keeping them safe, even if that structure is a prison. People stay asleep for a reason. The veil isn't just ignorance, it's protection. It's a defense mechanism against pain that feels too big to face. And when you come along with your intuition and your symbolic sensitivity trying to rip that veil away, you're not helping, you're traumatizing. You're forcing someone to look at something they've spent years, maybe lifetimes, learning not to see. Think about the friend who stays in the abusive relationship, or the family member who refuses to acknowledge the addiction, or the colleague who keeps getting passed over for promotion because they're terrified of their own power. You can see it. You can see exactly what's happening and why, but they can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And when you push too hard, when you insist on being the one to reveal the truth, you become the problem in their story. You become the one who's too intense and too negative, always stirring up drama. And the worst part? You start to need them to wake up. You start to define your own worth by whether or not you can get through to them. And that, right there, is the trap. Because now you're not serving them. You're using them to prove something to yourself. Here's what I've learned the hard way. You can't love someone into consciousness. You can't intuit someone into healing. You can't carry someone else's awakening on your back. no matter how clearly you see what they need. The only person you can save is yourself. And even that isn't really saving. It's surrendering. It's learning to let people have their own timing, their own pace, their own mythic journey, even if it looks like self-destruction from where you're standing. The ritualized version of your gift isn't about intervention. It's about presence. It's about being available without being invasive. It's about holding space without holding responsibility. Because the truth is, some people will never wake up in this lifetime. Some people will die still wrapped in the same patterns they were born into, and that's their soul's choice, not your failure. The moment you can release the compulsion to save, the moment you can honor the boundary between compassion and codependency, your vision stops being a wound. It stops draining you. And it starts to become what it was always meant to be, a quiet offering, not a desperate mission, a mirror held gently, not forced into someone's face. And in that shift, you finally come home to yourself. There comes a moment, sometimes after years of exhaustion, sometimes in a single breath of clarity, when you realize that the gift of seeing was never meant to be weaponized. It was never meant to be used as a tool to fix the world, to rescue the unconscious, to prove your worth by how many people you could wake up. The gift was always meant to be a ritual, a sacred practice of witnessing without attachment, of perceiving without interference, of honoring what is without needing to change it. And that shift, from compulsion to ritual, is where the real transformation happens. It's where vision stops feeling like a curse and starts feeling like a homecoming. Because ritual isn't about doing, it's about being. It's about creating a container for your awareness that's so grounded, so rooted in your own body and soul that you stop leaking your energy into other people's stories. You stop scanning every room for problems to solve. You stop feeling responsible for the unconsciousness around you. Instead, you turn inward. You ask, what does my soul need right now? What does my body need? What ritual can I create that honors this gift without letting it consume me? Ritual doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't require candles and altars and hours of meditation, though those things can help. Sometimes ritual is as simple as pausing before you speak, asking yourself, is this mine to say, or am I trying to save someone again? Sometimes it's lighting a candle in your mind before bed and imagining all the energies you've absorbed throughout the day returning to their source, leaving you clean and whole. Sometimes it's the practice of naming what you see without needing anyone else to validate it. Writing it down in a journal, speaking it into the silence, letting your intuition have a voice even if no one else hears it. Because the real wound isn't that people don't believe you. The real wound is when you stop believing yourself, when you start doubting your own perception because it's been rejected too many times. Ritual is how you rebuild that trust. It's how you create an inner house where your intuition is welcomed, honored, treated as sacred, even if the outer world still doesn't understand it. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop trying to force your vision onto others, the moment you stop needing external validation for what you see, people start coming to you differently. Not everyone, not the ones who aren't ready, but the ones who are, the ones who've been wandering in the abyss, looking for someone who speaks their language. They find you, because you're no longer broadcasting desperation. You're no longer radiating the energy of, please believe me, please see what I see. Instead, you're embodying something quieter, something more powerful. You're living as someone who has integrated their gift, who has made peace with the exile, who has turned their sensitivity into a source of wisdom rather than a wound. You become the oracle who doesn't need to convince anyone, the mirror who reflects without judgment, the one who can hold space for the shadow without being swallowed by it. And that embodied wisdom is what the world actually needs. Not another prophet shouting warnings into the void, but a soul who has learned to walk between worlds without losing themselves, who can see the ruin and the forest and the reconnection all at once, and still choose presence over panic. That's the ritual. That's the return. Here's what they don't tell you about heightened perception. It doesn't just live in your mind or your emotions, it lives in your body. And when your soul is processing more than your nervous system was designed to handle, when you're picking up frequencies and patterns and collective wounds that most people are blissfully unaware of, your body starts to break down in strange, inexplicable ways. Insomnia that no amount of melatonin can touch, a kind of wired, jittery exhaustion where you're too tired to function but too overstimulated to rest. Unexplained pain that moves around your body like it has a mind of its own. Your neck one day, your stomach the next. A tightness in your chest that feels like grief but has no clear origin. Doctors run tests and find nothing wrong, or they label it anxiety, stress, psychosomatic, as if naming it makes it less real. But you know better. You know that what you're experiencing isn't just in your head, it's your body's way of screaming that you're carrying too much, seeing too much, holding space for energies and truths that were never yours to hold in the first place. The thing about being an intuitive soul is that you don't just perceive information, you absorb it. You walk into a room and you feel the tension like it's your own. You have a conversation with someone, and hours later you're still carrying the weight of their unspoken pain. You scroll through the news or social media, and your nervous system lights up with the collective trauma, the ancestral wound, the planetary grief that's coursing through the zeitgeist. And because you're wired for empathy, because your sensitivity is both a gift and a vulnerability, you don't have the same filters that other people do. You're porous. You're like a sponge that doesn't know how to wring itself out. And over time, that porousness translates into physical symptoms, chronic fatigue, autoimmune conditions, digestive issues, migraines, a kind of bone-deep weariness that no amount of sleep seems to fix. Your body is trying to tell you something. I can't hold this anymore. I wasn't built to carry the entire world's shadow. You have to let some of this go. But here's the challenge. You can't just decide to stop being sensitive. You can't flip a switch and suddenly become someone who doesn't notice, who doesn't feel, who doesn't see beneath the surface. That's not how this works. What you can do, though, is learn to metabolize what you're perceiving instead of storing it in your tissues. You can create practices that help your body discharge the excess energy, movement, breath work, time in nature, anything that reminds your nervous system that it's safe, that it's allowed to rest, that not everything you sense requires a response. You can learn the difference between compassion and absorption, between witnessing someone's pain and taking it on as your own. And you can start honoring the physical limits of your vessel, recognizing that your body isn't the enemy, it's the messenger, the one trying to pull you back into balance when your soul has wandered too far into the mythic time, into the forest of other people's stories, into the abyss of collective suffering. The pulse of your own life, your own embodiment, your own right to exist without carrying the world. That's what your body is fighting for. And when you finally listen, when you finally let yourself rest, let yourself be human instead of oracle, that's when the screaming starts to quiet. That's when the body remembers it's not just a container for vision, it's home. So here we are, at the edge of everything we've walked through together. And if you're still here, if you've stayed with me through all 7 layers of this archetypal pain, then you already know. You're not reading this by accident. You're here because some part of your soul recognized itself in these words, because you've lived this exile, because you've carried this burden of seeing what others can't, and you're finally ready to do something about it. But here's the thing. Knowledge without application is just another form of spiritual entertainment. It's just another way to stay comfortable in your own suffering. So I'm going to ask you something directly, and I want you to sit with it, really sit with it. What are you going to do differently? Are you going to keep trying to save people who aren't ready to see? Are you going to keep absorbing everyone else's pain until your body breaks down? Are you going to keep silencing your intuition because the world doesn't know how to hold it? Or are you finally going to choose yourself? Are you finally going to create the ritual, the boundary, the sacred container that turns your gift from a curse into a source of wisdom? Because here's what I know. You didn't come this far just to stay stuck. You didn't survive the exile, the rejection, the loneliness of being the one who sees just to keep living half awake. Your soul is calling you towards something deeper, a reconnection with your own inner house, a return to the part of you that knows, that feels, that perceives truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And that return doesn't happen by trying harder or pushing through. It happens through ritual, through practices that ground your vision in your body, instead of letting it scatter into everyone else's chaos, through learning when to speak and when to hold silence, through honoring the fact that your sensitivity isn't a burden to be fixed, it's a language to be remembered. So I'm asking you, what's one ritual you can create today? What's one boundary you can set? What's one moment where you choose to witness instead of intervene, to feel without absorbing, to see without needing to save? And here's the other part, the part that's just as important. If what we've talked about today resonated with you, if you felt seen in these words, then you need to understand something else. Not everyone deserves access to your gift. Not everyone is safe to share your vision with. There are people in your life right now, maybe people you love, maybe people you've been trying to help for years, who are actively draining your soul, who are using your sensitivity against you, who are keeping you trapped in patterns that serve them but destroy you. And if you don't learn to recognize those people, if you don't learn to protect your energy from the ones who will never honor it, then everything we've talked about today won't matter. You'll just keep bleeding out, trying to pour your light into vessels that have holes in them. That's why I need you to watch the previous video I made, 7 types of people you should never help if you want to protect your soul, because that video is the other half of this conversation. It's the boundary work that makes your sensitivity sustainable. It's the wisdom that teaches you who deserves your energy and who doesn't. And trust me, if you're someone who sees deeply, who feels intensely, who's been carrying other people's burdens your entire life, that video will change everything. It'll show you exactly who's been feeding off your gift without ever giving back, and it'll give you permission, finally, to stop sacrificing yourself for people who aren't ready to do their own work. So go watch it, right now. Don't wait. Don't tell yourself you'll do it later, because your soul doesn't have time for later. Your body is already screaming, your intuition is already exhausted, and the longer you wait to protect what's sacred in you, the harder it becomes to reclaim it. This isn't just content. This is a mirror, an oracle, a ritual disguised as a video. And if you're serious about turning your curse into a gift, about transforming your exile into a return, then you need both pieces. You need to understand the pain of seeing, yes, but you also need to understand who's safe to see with and who you need to walk away from. That's the real work. That's the reconnection. And once you have both, once you've integrated the vision and the boundary, you'll finally stop feeling like your sensitivity is destroying you. You'll start to feel like it's leading you home. And if this video awakened something in you, if it touched a place in your soul that's been waiting to be named, then do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because we're not done. This conversation is just beginning. There's so much more to explore about the shadow, about the ancestral wound, about the mythic time we're living in and how to navigate it without losing yourself. This channel isn't here to entertain you. It's here to hold space for the parts of you that the world has rejected, the intuition that's been silenced, the vision that's been dismissed. It's here to remind you that you're not alone in this exile, that there are others who speak your language, who see what you see, who've walked this path before and made it through. So stay with me. Keep watching, keep integrating, because your soul deserves a sanctuary. And that's what we're building here, together.